Welcome back to the Miranda Podcast, a place where we dive into the world of communication and how to make it work for us and not against us. I'm Miranda, and today we're going to be talking about something we've all experienced: communication breakdowns. Joining me is
Iara,
who will share an experience where communication led to a conflict and what we can learn from it. So before we jump into the story, let's break down what communication is and why it's so important. First, I want to explain the definition of communication, which is basically an actionable transfer of information from one person, group, or place to another by writing, speaking, or using a medium that provides a means of understanding. So how about you, Iara? Do you have any personal insights on why effective communication matters in daily life?
Well, I honestly believe that because we use communication every day in different forms, effective communication is so important because that's what gets information to places. That's how we're able to inform people or motivate or persuade. And without effective communication, it leads to a lot of conflicts, and which are unavoidable, but I really believe there's still ways that you can restore it to become more effective.
Now that we know about that, let's talk about a real life situation where communication broke down. Can you share your personal experience when it has happened to you? Share what you're comfortable with.
Well, around last week, I had this classmate of mine, and we were group mates for this project, and we decided to delegate our tasks for the project, and I gave this classmate a specific task to do and when it was due. But apparently she might have misheard the due date or not have heard it at all, and so when it was asked from her, she couldn't provide the output that we were looking for, and because of that, it delayed our submission. So obviously as a group, it put a lot of issues and conflicts and also pressure on her because she didn't get to
must have been a lot of tension during that time.
There was, and even until now I think there's still some inner bitterness about what happened. I mean, because when you get a late submission, you get minus points. So I feel like in a way both of us could have had a wrong in it, and I also feel like both of us could have had a way to have made sure that didn't happen.
Yeah, it makes sense to hold a grudge, but first let's highlight what really went wrong. So what do you think was the major issue that affected all of you guys to feel this way?
I feel like the major issue that caused it was the lack of clarity, maybe. I heard that's a common cause of miscommunication. This classmate of mine, she could have re-asked for the due date instead of going to making assumptions about when she needed to submit it, because now all of us were involved in the fact that she was late. And maybe I also had a role in making sure I communicated the due dates more clearly instead of just blaming it on her because she didn't get to effectively do her job.
Yeah, I feel like when there's a failure in communication, it's always the two parties involved that could have worked together to make it better. And even though it's natural for us to blame someone, I think it's always important to remember to always understand what role you played in the situation. But for us to not have issues like that to happen again, we will discuss some ways to prevent communication breakdowns, because things like this isn't enjoyable and it's something we want to avoid. So first thing is practice active listening. Focus on the speaker and avoid distractions. So you could show engagement through verbal cues like, oh, I see, that makes sense, and non-verbal cues like nodding or just maintaining eye contact. Next, another thing you could do is clarify and ask questions. As you said, she might have made some assumptions or didn't do what had to be done because she wasn't really asking questions and everything. So if something's unclear, she should have asked for follow-up questions, and that's what we could all do in the future. Ask follow-up questions and avoid making assumptions and verify the information before reacting.
Yeah, and I also heard that a way also to avoid is to use clear and concise language. And I think that's also important because communication, that's like two-way, so it's not just all on one person. And yeah, so I feel like it was also on my part. That's why I didn't want to just blame and everything.
And then one thing that we usually don't notice but plays a really important role is your tone of voice and facial expressions impact how a message is received. So ensure nonverbal cues match the intended message rather than making your other feelings affect how the message comes across.
I agree.
And lastly, give and receive feedback effectively. Encourage open and honest discussions because you have to provide constructive feedback without being harsh or defensive. To sum all of this up, we just want to say that the next time you feel like a conversation is going south, remember to clarify, listen, and respond with understanding. That wraps up our episode of the Miranda podcast. Thank you, Iara, for sharing your experience.
Thank you for having me.
And communication isn't something that we are all perfect at. We can all improve, and hopefully today's discussion helps us do just that. Thank you for tuning in, and catch you next time.
Bye.
Bye.